Hi, good morning, it's JPR, and welcome back to another video. You know how people say when opportunity knocks, you should always answer the door? Well, I wish I could say that Game Freak did that 100% of the time, but with so many games under their belt, inevitably there have been some missed opportunities left on the table. So I recently took to Twitter, I know, horrible idea, and asked the masses, what are the biggest missed opportunities in Pokemon? Here are some of the most common responses that I got, and that I agree with, because this is my video. Bear in mind, there's probably a lot of recency bias with this, since new games are always fresher on people's minds, but here's what we got. Now, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver are generally seen as fan-favorite games that didn't do a ton wrong, but probably the biggest missed opportunity from those games was not using the Pokemon Crystal encounter tables. It's no secret that Johto's Pokemon diversity is nothing short of a travesty in most areas, and a ton of Johto Pokemon are either so rare or locked in the post-game that they may as well not even be in the decks at all. And while Heart Gold and Soul Silver did draw a lot of inspiration from Crystal, notably expanding the role of Suicune and Eugene in the story, this was probably the most notable change left by the wayside. Now, Heart Gold and Soul Silver did attempt their own fix for this issue through the newly introduced Johto Safari Zone, but I think most players would agree that the new Safari Zone was just a bit too tedious to set up and mess around with on every playthrough. For sure, a missed opportunity to make Johto team building a lot better. Moving on to the Unova region, I think most people wouldn't say there's a lot of missed opportunities here. Between Black and White and their sequels, nearly everything from this region was covered fairly well, but one location notably sticks out as feeling somewhat underwhelming. The Abyssal Ruins. I mean, this location was important enough for them to single-handedly resurrect Dive as an HM. But upon further inspection, you're basically just defiling a grave for money. Mr. Krabs would be proud. The Abyssal Ruins are pretty much the Safari Zone step limit game crossed with the abstract riddle solving of the Regis, which on paper doesn't sound bad, but the only purpose progression serves is to pick up more valuable artifacts to sell. There is some loose lore found in the inscriptions throughout the ruins telling the story of a past king, but it's all too vague to make any sense out of. I'm not saying there needs to be a legendary Pokemon at the end of every dungeon known to man, but I did expect something a little more satisfying. I would say at least the anime made a proper arc out of it with Meloetta, but honestly, that just makes it feel like even more of a missed opportunity from the game's aspect. Speaking of which, Challenger's Cave is another strange case of a Unova post-game location. It's home to some of the highest level trainers in the game, and one particular trainer even claims that a legendary Pokemon lives in this cave training its student. This is most likely a reference to the Swords of Justice and Keldeo, but most likely Cobalion, who oddly lives in an entirely different cave on the other side of the region. Okay, fool me once with Abyssal Ruin, shame on you. Fool me twice with an actual NPC saying there will be a legendary, shame on you even more! This cave is dark, and you need flash too. You have no idea how many hours I wasted covering the entirety of that bottom floor. Then the whole place just caves in, so you can't even explore it in the sequels. I still have questions that need to be answered. What gives? But when it comes to legendary and or mythical Pokemon locations being totally wasted, nothing even comes close to the locked power plant doors in Kalos. One of which leads to a steam plant which would presumably house a Volcanion event. Look, I know it's a fan theory and all, but seeing as how Volcania ended up with next to zero content in all of Gen 6, I'm convinced that had to be the original plan. This definitely would have been included in Pokemon Z if it ever actually were a thing. In fact, a majority of the responses I received from my tweets were mostly about Pokemon Z or Zygarde and how Kalos as a whole just felt like it was left unfinished. Which, it's hard for me to disagree with. I do think as far as missed opportunities go, the lack of a Pokemon Z has to be up there towards the top. And included in that would also be AZ's Floette, an actual unique form of Floette programmed into the game that was never given out. Maybe because it would have made the ending of X and Y feel a little cheaper in retrospect. Hey, I know you just got back after 3,000 years, but how about I give you to this random kid I just met? Strange as that would have been, it does suck that this entirely unique form was never given away. Before we move on from Gen 6 though, there is one other thing that numerous people brought to my attention. Well, it kinda had my attention already, but now I know I'm not alone. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire scrapping the Battle Frontier for the Battle Maison. Now, in truth, this was probably a time constraint more than anything. With ORAS coming out so soon after X and Y, logistically speaking, it was way easier to just copy and paste the Battle Maison from Kalos to Hoenn. I think them trying to change the lore behind the sisters to make it so they were always from Hoenn is kind of a funny cover-up though. See, here's the biggest reason why this stinks so much. As cool as the Battle Frontier was in Gen 3, actually beating it with legitimate Pokemon back then was incredibly hard. Maybe impossible for some people. Not me though, I'm built different. Breeding and Eevee training back then was like climbing Mount Everest. Now it's a walk in the park. People could have actually done the whole Battle Frontier and gotten several dozen hours of content out of it in Gen 6, and considering we didn't get a Pokemon Z, a Battle Frontier would have made that 2-year gap between ORAS and Gen 7 a lot easier to stomach. Heck, even a DLC edition would have been nice, but that's an idea Game Freak sadly wouldn't adopt until 6 years later in Sword and Shield. A bigger missed opportunity than any of these things though would be not subscribing to this channel for more great Pokemon content. It's free and it makes me feel good, so just do it, what are you waiting for? Moving on to the Alola region though, people were quite vocal about some of the region's missed opportunities, mostly regarding Ultra Space and the Ultra Beasts. I can certainly agree in regard to Sun and Moon. Ultra Space is this big concept that gets hyped up for half the game, and then when you actually go there, it's just a hallway with one battle. One battle with an oddly pointless transformation, I might add. Come on, man, I actually wanted to throw hands with Alien Lucami, not her slightly angrier looking Clefable. And then in the post-game, the Ultra Beasts just show up in random grass patches across Alola, Necrozma included. So you just never go back to Ultra Space. Now, yes, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, I swear I'm so tired of saying the word Ultra, did amend this by allowing you to travel to various wormholes and dimensions in the post-game, but again, most of these worlds weren't much more than a small route. Guzzlord's world was cool, being a post-apocalyptic version of Howl's City, and Kartana's dimension has actual dudes who will battle you there for some reason. But other than that, not much else can be said. Ultra Megalopolis is probably the most disappointing though, being a huge city home to actual alien people that you can hardly do anything in other than battle Necrozma. Also, is nobody gonna talk about how Red and Blue were literally vacationing in Alola while the Rainbow Rocket episode was going on and they just decided, nah, this is above my pay grade? Minor complaint, but still. I think where a lot of the disappointment comes from in Alola is that this region introduced tons of cool, otherworldly concepts of the franchise and teased us with all kinds of awesome stories to be told, only to barely elaborate on most of them. Though beyond the content of the games themselves, many people would agree that not putting Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon on the Switch was a missed opportunity in itself. I think most of us were hoping for a single version Pokemon Eclipse game that would literally just be Sun and Moon, but upscaled to a higher resolution, and that honestly might have been just enough for a lot of us. But instead, we got Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee as our first Switch game, which, if I'm being completely honest, this whole game feels like a missed opportunity, but if I had to hone in on one particular aspect, I wish they had done something with Giovanni to tie him into the Rainbow Rocket multiverse storyline. This game already makes no sense from a canonical aspect, there is no timeline that it perfectly fits into. So why not fully embrace the multiverse thing and just say this is another reality that Giovanni invaded? To me, this felt like the easiest layup to connect these games to Alola somehow, but instead we just had a random battle against Mina, of all people? Did anybody else completely forget about that until now? Anyway, Pokemon could have fully committed to their multiverse of madness they had going on. All the puzzle pieces were right there, ready to go, and rather than put the last piece in, they just dismantled the entire thing. But speaking of things being perfect as they are and then completely dropping the ball, can we talk about the PSS? That's right, I'm giving an L to every game that came out from Sun and Moon onward for not including this. Why are we back to using caveman technology with Wi-Fi codes and alerts that barely work half the time? We used to have a fully functional list of our friends right there on the bottom screen, but it was too good, so Game Freak took it away from us. In particular, this is a much bigger missed opportunity for Scarlet and Violet since those games are so multiplayer focused. The Union Circle feels like a feature we should have had 15 years ago, not now. There had to have been an easier way to connect with people than this. While I'm on Scarlet and Violet though, I have to say there's one massive thing missing from this game that absolutely needed to be there. Side quests. Side quests are a staple of any large open world game, especially ones like Pokemon where you're constantly collecting things. The quests in Legends Arceus were the perfect step in the right direction because these quests incentivize you to always be on the lookout for things. Without quests, traveling Paldea can feel a bit aimless at times, especially if you've already completed the 3 main storylines. The closest things these games have to proper side quests are the random dude who needs certain materials to make armor for Charcadet, and the gimme ghouls that just show up from time to time. But even that feels way less interesting than the Spiritomb hunt from Arceus. It really just feels like a vital ingredient was left out of the open world pie here with the lack of side quests. Though you could certainly argue that almost all of Scarlet and Violet's missed opportunities come from a lack of time in the oven, similar to Sword and Shield, which we surprisingly haven't discussed much at all in this video, but mostly because I really don't know where to start. Well, maybe I do. Let's be honest, Sword and Shield's real main story is the gym challenge and the relationships that you form with the other rivals along the way. Eternatus, Chairman Rose, and the whole Dynamax thing are more of an afterthought than anything. So I'm going to say the biggest missed opportunity was not showing us more of each rival's respective arc. Everything with Hop, Marnie, and Bede happens so fast, and I feel like the story they're trying to tell here about passing the torch to the next generation actually isn't that bad. It's just hardly a focal point for most of the game. Sword and Shield also has some incredibly cool background locations that are completely unexplorable, like that big castle in Hammerlock, that mill on Route 3, the Ferris wheel in Winden, most of Balanleia. This game has a horrible habit of showing off cool locations but not letting you actually interact with any of them. The rule of thumb used to be if you could see it, then you could go there, but in Galar it feels more like if you can see it, then you can admire it from a distance and imagine what it would be like to explore it. Also, man, I can't believe this region of all places had 0 returning characters from past games. With the whole tournament-style Pokemon League and the bigger battles than ever, this felt like the perfect setting for a world tournament with past champions, just like the anime did. In fact, in the Isle of Armor DLC, after donating 1 million watts to the dojo, Honey will actually call the Pokemon League to see if any champions are interested in coming to Galar for a battle. But they all decline since Galar is too far away, so you get to battle her instead. Man, talk about a cruel tease. But I saved the biggest missed opportunity for last, and that would be the entirety of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. There, I just saved you 20 minutes of ranting. You're welcome. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos just like this one. I'll see you guys next time.